Welcome to the Entangled Show, a weekly conversation where we bridge the gap between high-level physics and everyday reality. I'm your co-host, Pete Codella, streaming from Utah's Salt Lake Valley.
And I am Sumit Parashar. I'm from Bhilai and live in Lehigh. I live in two places at once, just like a quantum particle. I coined the term quantonomy, which is what this show is all about. Thanks for joining us.
Sumit, good to see you again.
Good to see you, Pete.
We're back for another fun quantum discussion.
And this is an important one. Let's get started.
So what is the quantum cliff? We've talked about it a few times on the Entangled Show. And in essence, it's a time when the quantum technology will make it so that previous encryption, previous technology is obsolete. And it's a concern because everything we do is connected to the internet, our data, our information, and we need to figure out how to protect that in an age of quantum computers. How's that for a summary?
Beautiful. That is absolutely on the dot. I'll just do a quick recap and maybe add a word there, is that technologies are going to break. Specifically, the encryption technologies are going to break, and we should be afraid at this point in time is because quantum computers are going to be so strong that they will know how to break our encryption. And that is the red flag that we want to raise today.
We're familiar with usernames and passwords. I think we've talked before about having a login that's connected to a biometric is probably fairly safe. Of course, if that information is stored somewhere, then I think that could be subject to being hacked as well. But yeah, this is an important thing that technologists, that businesses need to address and figure out how we'll operate in an age of quantum computing, quantum technology.
Absolutely, Pete. And then as we go down the discussion, we'll also talk about the fact that all kinds of data are going to be susceptible. The first set of data that comes to mind is authentication and authorization related, like you mentioned. That is, of course, the first one that will come into play. But this is going to make all kinds of data susceptible to breaking of encryption.
And that gets scary when you start to think of national security, right?
Absolutely.
Are we going to go back in time?
Hopefully not.
Do we want to talk about Y2K?
Yes, Pete. So that is such a beautiful parallel to draw between what we are going to see and what has already occurred. Is we have learned from history that we can have events like this that are global, not limited to a certain enterprise, not limited to a certain state or federal government, but global. So thanks for bringing that up. That is a beautiful parallel that we should be drawing between what we're going to talk about and what has already occurred.
And we probably have a half a generation that doesn't even know what Y2K is, the year 2000. You and I were born way back in the 1900s, but some of our listeners, maybe not. So Y2K was this thing in the late 1990s where we realized computers had been coded and developed on this two-digit system for the 1900s, and that we were changing into what would require a four-digit system to go from 1999 to 2000. And we didn't really know how our computers were going to react. Like, at least that's my memory of it. There was a lot of talk about it. There was a lot of news coverage about it. And then I will say that January 1st, 2000 came and went like any other regular day. Personally, I felt like it was, what was all that hype about? And in that sense, I think what we're talking about with the Quantum Cliff Q-Day is very different from our experience with Y2K. But anything else you would share from the history of that, Sumit?
Yes, Pete. So your observation is right on the dot, is that we survived Y2K without a blemish on us. So that's good news. But then what happened behind the scenes was a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. As I was a coder at that point in time, I used to write code on Oracle. I used to do a lot of PL/SQL, SQL programming. And then I actually did a lot of lift and shift where we had the old date structure of, say, 2 digits that would just say the year and not a YY part of it before. So we should have 4 digits on a year. And the problem was is that we're using the last two. And so I myself did a lot of lift and shift, and companies spent billions of dollars doing due diligence, doing remediation, fixing the issue. And that is the reason why we woke up on the first on 2000 and we didn't see the world crash in front of us. And there's a lot of behind the scenes things that happened that saved us from that apocalyptic scenario. And hopefully, this time around, we will see a similar due diligence and remediations done to data. So we wake up after Q day or after quantum cliff and find out that we are actually not in the cliff. So let me bring this up. I'm a data guy, and so I keep reminding people that it's all about the data. And still, in this case, too, it is actually all about the data. And here is the part that is scary and also satirical a little bit. We love data. We love our data. Our adversaries love our data even more. And
Of course.
so what we are going to talk about in very non-technical way is what do we do about it? How do we protect our data? And especially with reference to the adversaries, how do we keep it safe? So that's the idea.
And Sumit, let me just highlight one other thing that was on that previous slide about Y2K versus Q day, quantum day. We knew when Y2K was coming. We knew when the calendar was shifting from 1999 to 2000. Right now, when quantum becomes a reality is kind of a guess, and we have a pretty good guess. It's a handful of years. It's less than a decade away, and we've talked about that timing before. But that is a big difference, is the uncertainty of when it will occur.
Exactly. Thank you, Pete. That's a great point. Love it. We don't know when Q day is going to arrive. It is not a point in time as specified by the few major billion-dollar companies who are working on quantum computers. Essentially, it's a capability threshold. Is that when quantum computers cross that capability threshold, that's when Q day arrives. And so, good point. We don't know the exact chronological time when this is going to happen.
Yeah, more of an event driven by technological advancement.
Exactly. So next, let's talk about what do we do to save our data. So from a technology point of view, we use this process called cryptography. Essentially, it garbles the message that we are sending out. And that's how we are able to bring the data in a state where adversaries or black hat actors cannot see it. So the visual that we have here talks about the fact that a person X is trying to send you a message to person Y. And instead of sending the text message in plain text, we are saying, meet me at 5, meet me at 5. And so this is what we want to control. And so this is what the encrypted message looks like using cryptography. And this is just one form of data. There's a lot of other forms of data that we want to save that pertains to online banking, messaging, of course, as is described in the diagram, online shopping, credit cards, etc., etc. All of that data needs to be encrypted, but this is just a visual that describes a texting mechanism. And that's essentially the next slide too, is that using cryptography, we encrypt data. So cryptography is the process, encrypt is the verb or the action. But essentially, what last slide was talking about is that if you have readable data, like any of the data that's mentioned here or shown here, we should be encrypting it. And this is what it would look like. And in essence, for people who are not in information technology, this is how I would describe cryptography and encryption.
Okay.
So I think this is a slide that our viewers have seen earlier, Pete. And the idea to bring this slide up is that we are showing an evolution of computers. And just kind of makes sense is that if you have quantum computers that are hundreds and thousands and millions of times faster, the classical computers, we should expect that the protection and the encryption mechanisms that we have as of right now are going to break. Really quickly, moving forward, Pete, I'll let you talk to this one. This is about data centers.
Well, one point that you and I did discuss is that we may think that at some point in the future, as Q Day approaches, we'll get a warning from our bank, from whoever, hey, change your password, use this new encryption or whatever. And actually, it might be too late at that point. Bad actors are already capturing data from the internet and storing it and just waiting so that they can use quantum technology to crack encryption and then log in. We've seen so many industries hit by cyber attacks or holding data for ransom. It's an important thing that every business has to address. And I think even chief executive officers can be personally liable for some of these data breaches. But we've seen it in healthcare, we've seen it in banking, financial institutions. No one is immune from this type of bad actor capturing data. And like I said, even sitting on it for a little while and then using it.
Makes sense. So fortunately for us, NIST has been looking at this issue for a while. They have come up with standards that will help us go to the other side and not allow us to fall into the quantum cliff. And there's some terminology on the slide, and it's actually pretty simple if you look at it from this perspective. Is that you have classical computers working as of right now. Pretty soon you'll have quantum computers. You have cryptography that works with classical, and we have cryptography that will need to work with quantum. If somebody says PQC, it seems like a heavy word or a heavy terminology. But in essence, what we're talking about is cryptography that will work with quantum computers, or if you add the word post to it, which is after we get quantum computers up and working. So post quantum cryptography, or PQC, is a standard that NIST has come up with, where below that standard, there's a lot of algorithms. It can be defined as a standard, or it can be defined as a umbrella term that talks about how we can protect ourselves from quantum computers going forward. So PQC is, in all simplicity, it means post quantum cryptography, and it's a standard, it's a process that will allow us to protect ourselves from quantum computers. That brings us to this point of what is. So we'll go towards what is quantum cliff again in a bit, but Q day is a fundamental of what quantum cliff is all about. Pete?
Yeah, that's the day that technological advancement becomes a reality and that quantum computing's with us. That marks that day. You may hear it referred to as Y2Q,
Hmm.
but we don't know the year. We don't know the year of this quantum change. Could be around 28, 29, 30. We have heard organizations like Google and Microsoft and IBM, and Sumit, you mentioned Cloudflare, all chime in at around 28, 29 that we could reach this. So it's approaching quicker than we think.
Perfect. So that brings us to Q day. Q day is not a moment in time. This is where it differs from the Y2K problem we saw before, is that it's a capability threshold, is that who knows? It could show up earlier than we are predicting right now.
And
There's 4 of 2028.
this conversation is making me think, and your comment about World War IV. I do marketing in the custom home building construction industry, and there are some municipalities along the Wasatch Front that require builders to use paper forms. You can't use internet-based forms. You can't submit things digitally. I wonder if we will see more pushback against technology and digitizing things in the future due to uncertainty or maybe lack of trust from communities, from individuals. Like if I wanted to opt out of all those things, what would I do for banking or communication? Or it's a really interesting thing to think about the future and what might take place.
Absolutely. We'll have to come up with more solutions than just technology. And what you're talking about is actually done, where you need encrypted communications in a way that nobody can intercept.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot going on there. That brings us to what is Q day, and maybe we'll summarize what Q-Day is all about. There's top 20 economies of the world will start taking proactive action towards Q-Day, Q-Clip.
Yeah.
But yeah, essentially what we have on the visual right now is an aspect of when it's going to occur. So Q-Day could occur in 2029 or earlier. What does it mean when we say Q-Day? So it's not a date in terms of chronology, but it's a day where quantum computers achieve cryptographically relevant strength to break the current encryption. So it's a capability threshold and not a specific date. The slide also talks about the sectors that will be impacted right off the bat. So we have a government, of course, healthcare, finance, cloud, any cloud-based application, and of course, DoD-based applications. There's an interesting aspect that shows up on the slide, and the acronym for that is HNDL. But that's something else that we should worry about. And if we want to protect ourselves against HNDL, the date is not 2029. The date is now. So
Yeah, and
on the
that's the
next.
harvest now, decrypt later thing that I was talking about just a bit earlier.
Yes, yes. So let's discuss that some more. So harvest now, decrypt later. That's a threat as of today and not anytime in the future.
Yeah, the bad actors that people can gather and from pay for or access information now and just save it and wait a couple years and then dig into the information using new technology and have their way with it.
That is a scary prospect. If people are downloading our data right now and they're just saving it for later, and then they say 2028 or 2029, when they see what's in the data, they just not see the data, they also see the business processes and the metadata behind the scenes. That, in my opinion, it's a difficult thing for us to recover from, is that our business processes usually stay similar, if not the same. But if people figure out how we get stuff done behind the scenes and people see the process that was used to create that data, yeah, it can cause a lot of havoc. And for all we know, this is actually happening as we speak.
So, Sumit, do you have any recommendations for people to address this security challenge?
Hopefully, people listen to us, and the incident that you went through, hopefully, not a lot of us will have to go through that same thing.
Well, and thankfully, we're not the only ones discussing this. Anyone with a foot in what's coming with quantum knows Quantum Day is fast approaching and it needs to be prepared for and addressed.
Absolutely. That's a good news. We are sort of isolated here in Utah. We are talking to people in as individuals right now. But even President Trump a few weeks back actually used the word post-quantum to highlight the concern. And so there are efforts going on all over the place. But I believe in the next in 2 to 3 months, we should see more traction along these lines and actually start seeing some remediation issues going forward.
Well, kudos to the person who gave him those words to say.
Kudos to him. But yeah, at the end of the day, this is what it's all about. It's about the data. It has been about data when we had IBM computers that used to take entire rooms before. It's still about the data where we have phones, powerful phones with us. And it's still going to be about data when you have quantum computers up and working. So that is the highlight of the day, is that we have a quantum day arriving pretty soon. We have a quantum cliff that we will fall into if we don't start remediating for the quantum day, because it is all about the data.
Well, and if you're right that it could be first quarter of 2029, we're under 3 years till this day arrives. So I guess this is our stake in the ground, our flag, our red flag out there for people to pay attention and just be mindful of what's coming.
Absolutely. All right, Pete, that's all we had for today.
All right, good discussion. We'll see you next time.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you.
The Entangled Show podcast is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Please like and subscribe to the pod. Connect with us at entangled.show or send an email to info@entangled.show. I'm Pete Codella. Thanks for listening.
And I am Sumit Parashar, signing off for now. Thanks again for joining us here at the Entangled Show. We'll see you next time.